I've actually been surprised at the number of city jerseys and kits and stuff still walking around here at
Oh, really?
yeah, where I'm staying at the Great Wolf Lodge. It's families are still like, I mean, everybody's still wearing their city stuff. It's pretty awesome. I had this one kid come up to me. We were doing bingo earlier with my daughters, and this one kid came up to me and he's like, "Oh, were you at the game?" Because he saw my jersey on.
Yeah.
Like, "Were you at the game last night?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was a good game." He goes, "Oh yeah, I was there too." He's like, "I'm a sporting fan, but you guys played a good game. It was fun." And I was like,
Oh,
"Yeah,
that's really
that's nice. Thank
nice.
you." That was this was
Yeah,
kid had to have been like 8 or 9 years old.
but that's nice.
Yeah, it was fun. And then social media has been wild today. I don't know if you've looked at
No,
any of
no,
that.
I've been a little
I have
disconnected.
I have been extremely glad I'm still on vacation because every time I
Yeah,
come back and look at my phone, I'm like, if I wasn't still doing stuff with the family,
yeah,
I'd be into that, and I don't want to be into that.
yeah. No, I have
Let
been
it go.
disconnected too. So we drove from Kansas City to St. Louis,
Yep.
and then we went to the well, we didn't go to the game because we got here too late, but there was a concert at Ballpark Village. Today was
Oh, nice.
Fiesta Cardenales, which is like the big game for Hispanic, the Hispanic population here. So I
Yeah,
was there
cool.
like until 6:37, and then had to pick up the dog. So
Oh yeah.
I've been disconnected.
Nice. That's probably for the better. I mean, after a game like last night, that's probably the more appropriate thing to do.
Hmm.
All right, you ready? I'll bring us in.
Let's do it.
Welcome in, everyone, to Flyover Fallout. My name is Matt Baker. I'm here as always with Santiago Beltran, and we're here to recap everything about that rivalry match this weekend. It didn't go the way we wanted it to. 2-1 loss to Sporting Kansas City, but if I do say so myself, it was the most fun and the most energetic away crowd that I've ever been a part of as a City fan. And I think as a neutral even to an MLS match, I can't recall an away crowd of this size and of this fervor. It was something incredible to be a part of. Santi, how you doing? How you doing after the match? And what did you think of just the overall crowd last night?
Doing great, Matt. Unlike you, I'm back in St. Louis. But yeah, the atmosphere at Children's Mercy Park was amazing. I don't recall, and I went to a lot of games at home in Colombia, and some of the teams travel really well, but I don't recall a game that had so many away fans, and they were so loud. Like I could hear them from the booth right across, and I was even listening to some audio from the broadcast this morning. I could hear the crowd. That was amazing to see.
Yes, I thought the same thing. Rewatching it this morning, trying to keep the audio down for the family, but I did hear loud and clear, fleur de noise, the supporter groups, the supporters in the section and throughout Children's Mercy Park, loud as can be. The STL chants came through loud and clear. It was a sight to behold, and one of the more fun things. I don't know if you actually heard it or heard about it, but pre-match, after walking in and starting to do the chants after we entered, and about, I don't know, 15 to 30 minutes before the game started, it was incredibly noticeable how they raised the volume of the
Oh yeah,
speakers
yeah, yeah,
in the stadium to try to drown out the St. Louis fans and making the
yeah.
noise.
We noticed that right away when you guys were walking in. Yeah, they raised the volume for sure. We couldn't still hear you, but yeah,
Yeah.
you could tell they raised the volume, and they were ready for that. You know.
The self-proclaimed soccer capital definitely felt under siege from this traveling St. Louis fans, and that's kind of all they can claim to be is self-proclaimed. Because I think when you're talking proof in what is the action show, that's what St. Louis brought last night, and I was very proud of it. But Santi, we've got a whole match to get into. Let's not waste any time. Before we do, though, since we're recording this late on a Sunday night, I do want to give a huge shout out to City 2.
Yes.
Huge 3-1 win this weekend against Dynamo Dos on the backs of a hat trick by Faisal Batashi. An amazing performance. City 2 has been on a roll lately in playoff position in MLS Next Pro. Johnny Klein, Caden Glover, Michael Wenzel, the whole crew has been absolutely crushing it. And tonight was an amazing performance by Batashi. So I have to give a shout out to that before we get started.
Absolutely, that was a big win, a 6 point game, and now City Two is in fifth position. Although San Jose hasn't played yet, and
Right.
they have a game against Minnesota United, which is another team that it's in the bubble. So yeah, the boys have been doing great the last few weeks and picking it up at the right time, right before the playoffs.
Absolutely. But, that's the good news. Let's go over what happened this weekend on the MLS side. As we always do, let's start with our starting 11 and give some opening thoughts on that. It was the third match in 8 days, and so just like the last time we had 3 matches in 8 days with the San Jose Earthquakes, we had a rotated lineup. This one looked like Roman Berkey in net. Anthony Marcanic saw his first ever start at left back. Joachim Nielsen returned to the starting lineup with Tim Parker in center back. Kyle Hebert moved over to right back. First ever start at right back for Kyle Hebert, and we'll touch on that plenty.
Yep.
Jabulu Blom, Indy Vasilev in the central midfield. Nuke V. Thorson with his first start for City on the left side. Tomas Ostrak taking up the 10. Jared Stroud started on the right side this weekend, and Sam Adeniran up top. Santi, what did you make of this lineup?
Yeah, so obviously a third game in 8 days, you could expect some rotation from the game on Wednesday against Dallas with the three substitutions at halftime. Obviously, you have more guys with fresh legs, but yeah, a little bit of rotation. I was surprised with Hebert at right back. I actually had some flashbacks from that game at Nashville when
Nashville.
he was moved to right back, and I know we're gonna talk about that. But yeah, it's tough when you have 3 games in 8 days, and from the lineup you could see that some of the guys that started were the guys with fresher legs. Like
Hmm.
Stroud only played 45 on Wednesday. Ostrak only played 10 minutes. Adeniran only played 45 on Wednesday. Um, Nielsen didn't play on Wednesday at all. So yeah, it's tough when you had 3 games in 8 days, and obviously the team had, to me, the A lineup on Wednesday to secure that win, and then go to Kansas City and do some rotation and plan to put some of the other guys on the second half, but Sporting KC held their own and didn't let City score on the second half. But yeah, it's just a matter of just 3 games in 8 days, which is difficult during the summer.
Yeah, and listen, make of the entire lineup what you want. There are particular things that I take a little more umbrage to than others, namely Kyle starting at right back, which I think was more of a forced maneuver to keep him in the lineup versus anything. I personally would have preferred to see Josh Yarrow there, who I feel has seen a little bit more time at the right back position, especially later in games as he's had to move
Yep.
over. And in the limited fashion he's played out there, I've seen a little more success. And
Yep.
you're right, the Nashville game is scarred in our minds as Kyle Hebert's right back performance. And so that probably did cloud or color the judgment a little bit at least. But the last time we had 3 matches in 8 days was the San Jose Earthquakes match, and it went much better than this Sporting Kansas City match. So the narrative is entirely driven off of the results, and there is a measure of had we been able to keep the 1-0 lead or build upon that, and instead of what happened with the goals with the SKC, then this might have been looked as, oh, Kyle Hebert might be an answer at right back in a pinch,
Yeah.
or Jared Stroud can slot over to the right side and it could work. But I think the way that the game progressed, and we're going to talk about the game flow in a minute and the passing network here in just a moment, the way it progressed definitely showed us that there are drawbacks to having Jared Stroud and Kyle Hebert on the right side. And this more so than anything, I think, was that we chose to have FC Dallas be the win and the game we went for as far as who we put in the lineup and what our long-term goals were in this stretch of games. I think that's pretty apparent, even though nobody's going to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
And as a fan, I think the only thing you can say is that that sucks because we know that this rivalry isn't something City takes lightly. We know that they're going to, no matter who they run out in their starting 11, they're going to put their all into
Yeah.
it. And so this isn't anything from a lack of effort. This isn't anything from a they punted this game. Far from it. I think it could have gone any number of ways. It's just that the cards fell as they did as far as who needed to be rotated when.
For sure, the guys that play gave 100%, and it seemed to be going City's way at some point. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think City was trying to punt this game or anything like that. But obviously, people will want to see the best lineup possible on a game like this. But yeah, I think with the 3 games in 8 days, and knowing you had a home game against Dallas, which is also was also still is another game, another team that is right there fighting for playoffs. Better to go for that game and then see what fresher legs could do against Sporting KC. But I think some people don't see it that way, and they just
Yeah.
want to see the best against Sporting KC and try to win that game.
And you can't always do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're watching us on the stream and if you're listening to the pod, you might have noticed a little noise that just happened. I'm definitely at a makeshift kind of setup here, and so if you watch us on our stream, you know how animated I get with my hands a lot, and so I'm having to struggle myself not to touch this mic, which is resting on a stack of children's books at the moment. So I will try not to do that anymore,
Hey,
Santi.
but look at
Um,
you. You even have some scarves in the background, like in your makeshift set. So kudos to
I
you.
I the capital scarf, and I managed to get one of the game day scarves. Lucky, I think, because I think they sold out pretty early on those. But Santi, let's pivot to the passing network. Another thing we like to talk about here on Fallout, and the passing network was a little. I think it was exactly what you expect from watching the game. Sometimes these networks allow a little more insight into a different way to view the game from what it might have appeared. To me, though, it reinforced everything. I saw this game as being very strong on the left side. I thought our connection from the two guys who saw their first city starts, Anthony Marcanic and Nuke Thorson, that connection was alive and well throughout the game. And if you look at the passing network, it showed that offensively we were in a back three
Yeah.
with Nilsson, Parker, and Hebert from left to right. And the right side had almost no cohesiveness to their passing. There was no consistent connection that was made between Hebert and Stroud or Hebert and Vasilev out there, especially in the first half. And so before the subs came and the formation started to shift, Jared Stroud actually found himself centrally a lot of the time. He was moving very, very much inside. And this was a theme, I think. A lot of the time, whether it was a fullback or one of our wingers, there was a lot of inverted action going on where you're moving from the wing or the channel centrally. And the amount of times that happened, I think, especially from Jared Stroud's perspective, it was probably a little uh, amplified because Kyle Hebert stayed back so much. And when he didn't stay back, he moved centrally towards like a defensive midfield or a high center back ish type role. Whereas juxtaposing that to the left side, Anthony Marcanic was high for nearly the entire game. He was very much in a wing back type position here. And his connection to Nuke Thorson, who presented himself with these extended minutes as a very direct to goal player. I can't count the number of times that he received a ball and he just made a beeline for the goal as opposed to trying to move the ball to the end line and send a cross in or something. He was very much a finishing oriented player. And that was pretty exciting to see, and I think there's absolutely a place for that long term, and and especially with his ability to finish, that's going to be very exciting to me. But what did you see from the passing network and just the way that some of these groups of players played off of each other?
Yeah. So right off the bat, when I saw the lineup, the first comment I made to my partner on the broadcast was like, "Yeah, this to me looks like it's gonna be a back line of three when the team attacks. Marcanic going on the left, and then you have a Heber shifting to center back. And when I look at the passing network, that's what I see. But yeah, it's a little surprising how left side oriented the team was. I'm sure there is something that the team identified, and you could see
Mm-hmm.
that like when Sam Adeniran had duels with Jake Davis, the right
Yes.
back. Obviously, if you look at if you compare both of them, like Sam Adeniran is bigger and can win more duels, and he was successful. So I think that's something that the team identified and tried to go
Mm-hmm.
for attacking on the left side, and you could see that on Adeniran's goal and on some other chances City had. But yeah, I think it was also the fact that Heber went at right back. It was also a matter of how many minutes Akil Watts had played against Orlando and against Dallas, and there could have been other options, but that's the way Carnell and his staff like put the game, and it seemed to work for the first 30 minutes. One thing I was going to
It
mention,
did.
the Sporting KC, I was looking at some on their game notes, they are one of the teams that has scored more goals in the first 30 minutes. So after City went up and it had been 30 minutes, I was like, oh, this is like we broke that, and this is gonna be good for City. But obviously, they kept pushing and were able to score quickly right after the 30th minute.
Right after, yeah, and interesting thing, I don't wanna say funny, the interesting thing about the asymmetrical approach that you're describing there, where Marcanic moves up, is so often lately with City, it's been on the opposite side of the field,
Hmm.
right? With Akil Watts moving up to Erasmus Alm, for instance, and those connections working very well. The big thing to me is we can do that and be successful. We've proven that we can have that asymmetrical shape to our attack, and it can be successful. The problem ended up to me lying in Kyle Hiebert at right back, where Kyle Hiebert is a fantastic defender. He has a lot of credentials he's built up in a very short period of time at center back. He's even built up a decent amount of credentials on the left back side. We've had successful matches with him in at left back. But the goals that were allowed that we're going to go through in a moment, as you listen to them and we describe them, the asymmetrical offensive shape cannot work unless you're strong defensively, especially on your right side. If
Hmm.
you're pushing up and you're moving your shape that way and you're pivoting it, then you either stay strong in your weak side of your attack where you're purposefully leaving your defensive players, or everything's going to fall apart on the defensive end. It doesn't, you can't have things both ways. Either you push up and you stay strong defensively, or you push up and you collapse defensively and bad things happen. And that's what ended up happening for City, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the goals.
Yeah. So the goals, they didn't come super early, but it ended up being St. Louis striking first. And we know that St. Louis does well when they strike first. In fact, coming into this match, they were undefeated and haven't lost a game coming into this, having scored first. And the first goal to me was a pretty quintessential St. Louis City style goal. The whole sequence started and it occurred in the 22nd minute. Sam Adeniran finished it, but it started with Sporting Kansas City trying to beat St. Louis over the top, like we knew they would if they had difficulty building out of the back. We said this on Flyover Footy exactly, that their bread and butter is building out of the back, working the ball progressively up, getting themselves possession based deep into the attacking end, which they did have success later, but in this case they didn't. And so what they did is they sent the ball over the top. Kyle Hiebert recovers this ball from the end line in a duel, gets it back to Jared Stroud. Stroud hits it back to Hiebert, who clears it centrally. And Sporting Kansas City actually recovers this a bit, but a Jabulu Balom challenge wins the ball for St. Louis. The ball is open, recovered by Indiana Vasilev, who in typical midfield manner, whether it's Indy Vasilev or Edu Leuven, he immediately recovers the ball, tries to get that half step, looks high, and sends it long for Sam Adeniran, who, to your point, Santi, on that left side against Jake Davis, Sam was in an original 1v3 in open space on the left wing. When he recovered the ball, he then took Jake Davis on 1v1 into the box, keeping the ball to the left channel. And just like we've seen a few times from Sam in open play now, banged one home in that 1v1 to put City up 1-0, 22nd minute. What did you think of that?
That was a great play by Basilev. Great vision, seeing Adeniran starting that run, and then Adeniran great on the 1v1 and trying to find a space to take that shot. So yeah, that was a great play. It's like a city style play. We have seen plays like that multiple times, and it's exciting
Oh, yeah.
when City recovers the ball and transitions so quickly and results in goals.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about trying to invite Kansas City in almost is when you're able to build the ball out from your end line, basically, where Hebert kind of started that whole sequence. And it originally started from the end line where he recovered it, ended up getting to Indiana Vasilev in the midfield after a tackle by Blom. You're having Kansas City be pushing themselves so high in trying to possess the ball deep. Well, that's exactly what we hoped would happen. And when St. Louis is able to recover the ball, send it long, good things happen when they have space out there. And Sam Adeniran, we know, you give him space at this point, you can trust that he's going to be at least putting a good shot on goal or putting you in a good chance to finish that opportunity. And in this case, he did. But unfortunately, it wasn't long lived. As you made the note, Just after 30 minutes, Sporting Kansas City got it back. It came 31 minutes into the game after Roman Berkey punched away a corner kick. The loose ball was played by both sides centrally in the Sporting Kansas City half, was won by Alan Pulido, who carried the ball into the attacking third. He passed it over to Eric Tommy for a shot that was blocked in the box, recovered by Tommy, and honestly, it was pretty impressive recovery by him. But as he recovered the ball, everyone converged on Tommy. We had, I think, 5 or 6 defenders who go centrally after Tommy. Tommy kicks it to the left to Daniel Saloy, who then crossed it low and hard in the middle for a rushing Alan Pulido for the goal. Now, both goals have their own circumstances that we need to talk about. This goal in particular, before I turn it over to you and let me know what you think. The two big things on this one for me are the potential offside and the overall positioning from St. Louis. So starting with the positioning, with the ball being fought in the outside of the box there were basically, I said 5 or 6 around Tommy, but you can count 9 players that were around Tommy, at least within the channels or so. And so our back line, this is where Kyle Hebert was tucked really high and very much inside, almost like he was trying to play Tommy. His eyes were there trying to recover the ball, despite the fact that he was in an area that I would say is the responsibility of a Blom or a Vasilev. He wasn't alone in doing this, while Anthony Markanek was also tucked inside and lower from the other side. But when Tommy had the ball, he found a little space. The person he found was Daniel Saloy out to his left, which you can only argue was Kyle Hebert's responsibility. With Saloy free from coverage, he could play the ball inside and had plenty of space to do so. And that's when you introduce the potential on offside issue of did Sam Adeniran keep Saloy onside, and I think it was Gutierrez. Was Gutierrez in an offside position enough to affect the play? Because there's no doubt he was offside. He was in an offside position. But was Felipe Gutierrez in a portion of the field that would affect the outcome of the play? And I would argue, because of what Alan Pulido did and where he came from, I would argue yes, because the sequence was so quick and Saloy received the ball. So even if Saloy was onside, what happened with Gutierrez, Pulido rushing past him as soon as Saloy got the ball, Gutierrez's offside position was exactly where Pulido put himself to finish the ball. That's how I saw it. How did you see it, Santi?
So I'm gonna go back a little bit after that punch by Berkey. I think City found itself maybe out of position for some players and could have done better trying to go after that ball after that punch. But yeah, obviously Sporting KC got it, and on the shot by Tommy, yeah, too many people around him, and just looking at the replay, you could see that maybe the guys that were on him were trying to avoid the foul. But still, you give him too much freedom with so many guys around him, and then a great pass to Shaloy, and yeah, whether it was offside or not, great play by Tommy, and then you cannot give a space to a guy like Alan Pulido, who is on a roll this year. He's great when he's not injured, and he's having a great season this year.
Yeah, that kind of is a microcosm, I think, of some of the defensive issues that St. Louis has had on their back line, where everybody gets so excited to try and clear the ball and play wherever the ball is, be very aggressive. But at the same time, you have to really understand, to me, where your responsibility lies in space. So knowing that there are areas of the field, there's boxes and points where your responsibility lies in the position that you're playing. I would never argue that where Tommy is the responsibility of the right back, especially in the 3 center back formation that we had been running while on offense. Even dropping Markanek back where he was, you would never ask. I don't even think you would really ask your center backs to fill that role. That's a high line to be having when you're being pressed so high up so quickly. So whether you leave it to know that Blom and Vasilev have that, there's got to be a level and a measure of trust in your teammates to cover the areas of the field that is their responsibility without you undermining your own area of responsibility in the positioning. And I think that's where Kyle Hebert got out of sorts a little bit. And you can make an argument that kind of was a little pervasive. So leading into the next goal, did you have anything else you wanted to say about the first Pulido goal before we move on?
No, let's look at the second one.
Yeah, the second one was a little bit of a dagger, honestly. I was talking with Brendan Weesey on the Big 550 KTRS on Sunday morning, and I mentioned that to me there are three areas of the game in which they tend to dictate huge portions of the game. It's obviously the beginning of the game. I would argue the very end of the half,
Hmm.
where whatever happens at the end of half sets the tone for halftime, for your adjustments, your actual coaching that goes on in the locker room, and how players have to sit with themselves for 15 minutes, because whatever happens, if something happens at the end of the half to change the pace or the flow of the game, that affects you mentally when you go into the locker room and you have nothing but time to think about what just happened. And then the beginning of the second half, whatever happens there, that can also dictate the game the rest of the half potentially. And we've seen that happen so many times with City this year. Unfortunately, with Sporting Kansas City, we were on the receiving end of it, as in the 44th minute of the game, it's kind of started with a potential call for a handball in midfield, as well as a potential foul on Nukvi Thorson, as he was dispossessed by a couple different SKC players, Johnny Russell among them, in the attacking half, City's attacking half, that led to this whole sequence. I point to a camera angle that was caught. It was a still image caught by our friend Will Bramlett. He posted it over on his Twitter account that showed a pretty obvious foot to the leg of Thorson by Johnny Russell. So that's a foul that wasn't called. But also, I think there was a handball in that sequence of play that was questionable, that never really got a good look. All of that led to what I call a quintessential Sporting
Yeah.
buildup. So possession in the attacking half, they built to their wings very high with overlapping runs on their right side. The City backline was committed to their far left to manage this build. The overload that Kansas City put through was very successful. Kyle Hebert, again, at the right back role, was the furthest defender to the right, but he was deep central again. He was very much in the middle of the box, leaving Alan Pulido unmarked at the top of the box, where this whole sequence is developing, and you're having players kind of move fluidly, offensively and defensively, in and around the left side of the box. Whereas Alan Pulido, all he did was basically run in place on the outside of the box. He was unmarked, as Blome was more to the left. Stroud was still coming in from his position at the right mid when Jake Davis crossed the ball into the very high end of the channel. Alan Pulido recovered it. He hadn't really moved anything, just waited for the ball to come to him, and he scored, putting Kansas City up 2-1. Again, a bit of a defensive lapse and not able to handle that quick progressive overload that Kansas City threw at us.
Yeah, and definitely on Heber, yeah, he was too centrally at that point, and I don't know if that's part of the mindset of and be playing like, yeah, he has been playing left back, but he hasn't played right back a lot, so I don't know if he goes into center back mode and he just loses
Could be.
references there. But yeah, another great finish by Pulido, and um, a play that was built greatly by Sporting KC. But yeah, you cannot again you cannot give a space to so much space and freedom to Pulido, knowing how effective he is. And again, 44 minutes. Yeah, if it had been 1-1 at halftime, could have been a different game. Even though Syria made some substitutions and had some chances early in the half, it's just different when you keep it tied without a goal at the end of the half, and it's just a different game.
Well, and what I saw is that it was a different game on the Sporting Kansas City side, and it may have really materialized after the Sam Adeniran goal was called back to start the half. But what we're going to describe in the second half, even though there were no goals, I think there were a lot of formational shifts from City, but also there was a very intentional change by Sporting Kansas City in their approach. They were no longer they were content with giving up the ball. They were no longer interested in possessing the ball, moving it high, keeping that possession, and working towards a goal. It was very abundant, and the possession numbers show this.
Yeah,
Where in the first half, I think the numbers that I had were it was Sporting Kansas City had a 66-34 possession split. In the second half, Sporting Kansas City had a 48-52 possession split. St. Louis actually had more possession in the second half. And this was by design by Sporting Kansas City, forcing St. Louis to do this. Now, you mentioned it, the halftime subs, and one of them was necessary. Tim Parker had to leave for a lower body injury. Josh Yarrow took his place. I think the others were more tactical or related to the 3 games in 8 days. In Klaus's case, I think it was related to his prescribed minutes.
yeah,
He Carnell said this week that he should be able to go 45, and in fact was able to go 45. It's just the back half. So halftime subs, Klaus, Leuven, and Yarrow come in for Indiana Vasilev, Tomas Ostrak, and Tim Parker with that lower body injury. Our formation moves to kind of a 4-4-2 or even a 4-4-1-1 with Markanek, Nilsson, Yarrow, Hebert on the back line. I kind of saw it as Nukvi Thorson, Blom, Leuven, and Stroud as that more flat midfield.
Mm-hmm.
And then Adeniran and Klaus. It seemed at times that Klaus was playing an underneath 9, at least at the beginning of the half. He very much moved higher, especially as Sam left later. But that was interesting to see. Klaus's positioning a lot of this time ended up being towards the middle of the formation as opposed to being that hold up player. And that obviously was very intentional. Did you see that, or did you see anything different from Klaus from what you expected?
Yeah, yeah, he looked a little bit different. I think part of it is that he's coming back and has those prescribed minutes, and
Mm-hmm.
at this point, Sam Aaron will do better in that role of holding the ball and trying to create a space for and draw defenders for other players. So yeah, not surprised. I don't think we can ask Klaus to do what he was doing when he was scoring earlier in the season. He's getting back, and he mentioned on Monday during his press conference that in terms of fitness, he still had a lot of work to do. So I think that's part of it.
Makes sense. I counted about 4 big moments in the second half. And the first one, we almost alluded to it, 51 minutes. It was the St. Louis goal that was called back, scored by Sam Adeniran. Started with a build from the back through Leuven, actually, into Markanek, wide left. Markanek, they called it on the broadcast how Leuven was starting to drive the offense and move the ball up very effectively. Leuven to Markanek, wide left. Markanek crossed it up and over the SKC back line to Adeniran, which was actually kind of an impressive cross. Like I
Yeah,
gotta give credit where it's due on this kind of cross, because this is the cross that Klaus looked for early in the season from Nelson. And so seeing Markanek able to provide this kind of service up to our holding striker is a really good sign. Perfectly placed to Sam, but Sam ended up being called offside. There wasn't necessarily, to me, and this is my issue with it, there wasn't a clear and obvious angle I saw that could really determine one way or another, or say definitively, okay,
hmm,
100% offside. It was that TV camera angle where you could draw a line, you could look, but it wasn't straight on, right? it
yeah,
was it was that little angled. And the thing to me with that is, if you're going to be consistent, first of all, that's all that I ask for. I felt that the offside call that we had in the first half, they were consistent early in the sense that they're saying we're letting it play on. We're going to
hmm,
let the play finish. We're going to call the whatever happens on the field. We're going to call it that way. And then if we need to review for an offside or a penalty or something, we'll do that.
yeah,
But we're going to let the play progress, call it on the field, and then go to VAR to confirm it. This one, they didn't do that. They called the offside on the field, negating the goal. And so any VAR, I don't think, is even applicable in that sense for the goal. But what it does is it takes it from confirming the goal or not confirming the goal based on offside to confirming or not confirming the offside itself. And that's where I have the big problem is when they, yeah, if you think it's offside, you raise it immediately after the goal. Bilbo Swaggins in the chat called it out. I think that they let play progress, but
yeah.
they didn't let play progress to respect the end result. So it's kind of defeating the purpose of letting play progress if you're going to do that. That's the big issue I have. I'm not saying it was or was not offside. I'm just saying the consistency started in the first half with letting the play progress, letting the finish occur, and then looking back to see if you can confirm it or if the call on the field will stand. They didn't necessarily do that. So that's the big issue I have with the disallowed goal from St.
Yeah,
Louis.
definitely a late call. But to your point, yeah, they're supposed to late play progress, and after the outcome, decide if it was onside or offside. Not sure why she raised the flag so late. Obviously, she was letting the play progress, but um, after Sam and Aaron scored, it took her a while to raise the flag. But I noticed
Yeah.
there was a change in the officiating from the first half to the second half. During the first half, there were a lot of fouls that weren't called, and it was both ways. And then on the second half, the referee got more strict with the calls. I don't know if that was that somebody told him, hey, you're not calling anything, or it was just the way the game was evolving. But I noticed that for sure.
That's a fair assessment, and I think it's another issue with the consistency that I know a lot of St. Louis fans seem to have today on Sunday in the discussions and the references back. Consistency from the first half to the second half is just as important as anything else, and essentially undermines a lot of the trust that the officiating crew would earn one way or another. However you're going to start the game, however the first half goes, stay consistent. That's all we can really ask for. But the goal was disallowed, and this is really where I start to see not necessarily a parking the bus, but Sporting Kansas City very much saying, okay, here's the ball. Try and beat us. Try and tie it because we trust our defense to not let you get a chance. And just like we saw against FC Dallas, that's not a recipe for success for St. Louis. We've never been too great at beating a low block. I think Dallas being down a man helped immensely in that. It gave us the opportunity later in the game to force transition. We weren't able to do that necessarily here, as for St. Louis, the next moments ended up coming in the 77th and 87th minute with Leuven and Klaus, respectively. But Sporting Kansas City did have a couple of big moments here. And I think the formation shifts from City need to address that really quickly. In the 62nd minute, Rasmus Alm came in for Anthony Marcanic. And this was the moment that I saw Jared Stroud go from the right mid over to the left wing back area. And
Mm-hmm.
it looked a lot to me like a 3-4-3 with Nilsson, Yarrow, Hebert in the back, Stroud, Blom, Leuven, and Alm in the midfield, and Thorson, Adeniran, Klaus in a very fluid attack. Klaus a little more deep, as we were talking about. Thorson and Adeniran higher. Stroud very much tracking back in that left back position when he needed to. There was a lot of times that he would move back close to the end line on our defensive side. So that left wing back was very much his to play at that point, where Rasmus Alm took his spot at the right mid. This kind of set the stage for 73 minutes. The big moment, one of the two big moments really for Sporting Kansas City. It ended up being back to back, where the counterattack after a loose ball was central. St. Louis was trying to keep the ball in the final third. Joachim Nilsson ends up coming pretty high into the attacking half to try and recover the ball. He's tackled hard. The counter that Sporting Kansas City led on that led to two open shots by Daniel Saloy on their left side. Both of them, this was an incredible moment from Roman Berkey. Both of them were blocked beautifully by Berkey in open space. It was a 1v1 to its extreme. The only other SKC shot was by Johnny Russell on the ensuing corner kick, and that's three shots on goal that they had for the entire half right there. Two big moments, 73, 74 minutes. Berkey making three saves back to back to back. Quite the sequence by Berkey.
Yeah, great job by Berkey, keeping the game um, just within one goal. But yeah, showing how good he has been for City, and coming in big moments like this. I thought that was gonna maybe provide some, like, a little bit more of a spark. Like, okay, we got Berkey, he's making great saves. Let's go, let's continue pushing and get the tie. But yeah, Sporting KC defended well, and City didn't really create a lot of shots on goal during the game.
It almost did though, right?
Yep.
Because those are at 73 and 74 minutes. At 75, St. Louis has their final sub. AZ Jackson comes in for Sam Adeniran. We do shift more to a true, what I saw, a 3-4-1-2, where it was an interesting look. AZ moved to the 10 underneath Thorson and Klaus. Rasmus Alm was essentially acting as a right mid, right wing back,
Yeah.
opposite of Jared Stroud, kind of like he did this past week, which is kind of an exciting role for him because it gives him an opportunity to be on the field while you have your, what I would say, more true attackers in a Klaus, a Joachini, and a Deniran, and even a Thorson. So more Rasmus Alm on the field, I'm a huge fan of. So I actually like to see that and like to see him produce in that role. And then just a couple minutes later, it led to an Edu Leuven shot from outside the box, which in my opinion, minus the Sam Adeniran goal that was called away, was our best
Yeah.
opportunity in that half.
Yeah, but Tim Melia came up big there.
Huge.
He's a veteran in the league, and he has had really good moments and good seasons for Sporting KC, and showing how important he is for that team.
Yep. Sporting made their own series of subs there. Daniel Saloy, Johnny Russell came out, and then Klaus had his header opportunity that couldn't quite find net there at 87, and that's kind of all she wrote, Santi. Any other notes or items you want to discuss about the game flow itself?
Yeah, so very quick, you mentioned Rasmus Alm acting as a right wing back. Just makes me wonder if we may see more of that. If at some point we have three center backs in the starting lineup. Like yesterday was more by design, by the flow of the game,
Mhm.
but maybe this could be the future for some games.
We've been building to this narrative of desperate to see a true three center back look that has consistent wing backs on both sides as opposed to this asymmetrical look. Having Anthony Marcanic opposite Rasmus Alm, for instance, and having three center backs of potentially Joachim Nielsen, Tim Parker, and one of Hebert or Yarrow.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty exciting look, and it reminds me of national team. Make that link to Timothy Weah, where he's taking a right wing back role where he is for his club, as opposed to more of a right winger or a push or a attacking right side. So this is it can be a natural progression if you manage it well, and it can be something I think that can benefit Rasmus Alm to continue to be in the lineup when you have guys like, especially at a 4-4-2
Mm-hmm.
or a 3-4-1-2, where you're having Klaus, Joachini, Thoresen can be on the left side anywhere. I mean, the possibilities are endless, but when you start to look at these kinds of formations, it does open things up quite a bit. But that's kind of looking down the field. There were a few interesting notes about the game. I wouldn't necessarily spotlight any one player as being overly exciting. Sam Adeniran scored his sixth MLS goal for City in his seventh start. So he's sticking with his hot pace, and he's definitely scoring open play goals, which we had a concern of a few weeks ago. His all around game is clearly picking up. We need him to continue that form as we go into the final stretch of the season. Indiana Vasilev recorded his fifth assist of the season, so he's continuing his great service centrally and on the right side when he's out there. There were a few other kind of intangible stats that I really want to point out. So one of them is tackles and interceptions. Jabulu Blom led that stat. We haven't talked about him a whole lot, but I think he did a serviceable job, especially on the defensive end, doing what he needed to in the central midfield. Looking at pass completions, obviously Joachim Nielsen was predominant for there, working the ball out of the back when he needed to. One interesting stat that I like is progressive carries into the final third. This was kind of interesting to me. So this is when you can carry the ball to the final third of the pitch closest to the goal. And Nukvi Thoresen led our team with 5 of these. So this is what I was saying at the beginning of the pod about Thoresen being more direct to goal. And when he receives the ball, he's able to carry it deep, and he's very effective with the ball at his feet, just as he is finishing the ball. And so that was an exciting piece of his arsenal that we kind of saw magnified with his first start with City, is his ability to progressively carry the ball, work himself, not unlike Sam in that goal scoring scenario in the first half. So I look for more from Nuke V. Thorsen in that regard. And then, from there, there's a lot of things that went well, but there's a lot of things that went wrong. And I think there's definitely a lot of evaluation this team needs to do with this first full week of rest going into the match against LA Galaxy next week.
Yeah, and now it gets an extra day of rest since that game is on Sunday. Um, and it's gonna be something similar. I know we're gonna preview that on Thursday, but LA Galaxy, another team that will need a win to stay alive in the playoff race. So it's gonna have a similar feeling to what the Sporting KC game was yesterday in terms of what the opponent needed to do.
That's right. Santi, anything else from this game you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, no, that's all for us for today, and we'll see you guys again on Thursday or Friday if you don't see
Yep.
the live version.
That's right. We'll have the full preview of LA Galaxy coming up on Thursday for the stream, Friday for the pod. And just another kudos to all the traveling St. Louis fans. That was a phenomenal sight to behold, both in the tailgate, the march, the bus trips that I heard of, the commanding presence of City Park West out in Kansas. I think it was on full display. I know that no Kansas City fan had seen anything like that as far as traveling fans go. Cohesiveness, sound, noise, fervor, everything like that. Sporting has had some good attendances in their playoff history, so that I don't want to take anything away from those teams that have played them there, but this was different, and I think we all know that. And so this is going to be exciting to see this rivalry develop, and Hopefully we can take that rubber match later on this month, because Sporting Kansas City will return to St. Louis for round 3 this year. As these teams leave this weekend, Sporting Kansas City improved to 8-11-8 with a -1 goal differential on the season, remaining in 11th place outside of the playoff range right now after 27 games. St. Louis, however, maintains first place in the Western Conference, falling to 15-10-2 with a +18 goal differential. Right now, as we record this, they're 6 points clear of Seattle with a game in hand on them after Seattle tied Portland. And depending on what happens later tonight as we record it, you'll either be 7, 6, or 4 points ahead of LAFC. And it's the one time a year, I guess, that we really need to root for Messi. Is that what we're doing tonight when we finish this?
Yeah. I guess I'll root
Yeah.
for Messi. Even if LAFC wins, you and Bradley Carnell said it in the press conference after the game. At this time of the year, like all the games are really tight, and everybody is fighting to get in the playoffs. So even if LAFC wins, City still is still 4 points ahead, and obviously, hopefully, can take some good things from this game and make the necessary corrections and be ready for LA Galaxy on Sunday.
Yeah. One thing we didn't address in the second half, on top of all the other officiating things, because I felt like it was beating a dead horse, but there was a potential handball situation in the second half that was not called. The TV camera angle was not quite as clear as the angle we saw online on Sunday, which Taylor Twellman retweeted with a kind of a kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
emoji.
yeah,
Iffy at best with the arm of the player. I can't remember who it was, Santi, but it was outstretched, coming back as the ball hit, and to call it keeping your arm without making your body bigger, to call it that's pushing it.
yeah. I don't, to be honest, I don't know what a handball is anymore.
No, there's no consistency. It's That's probably why I didn't want to bring it up and spend a whole lot of time on it, because it was frustrating. One of the few things that I hate to harp on the officiating, so
Yeah.
we'll leave it at that. But Santi, we'll be back on Thursday to record looking at LA Galaxy and our makeup game from the July 4th reschedule. For Santi, I'm Matt. Thanks for joining us. We've been Flyover Fallout here with you, looking at the 2-1 loss to Sporting Kansas City. Hope you have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you later, and go City.
Vamos City.